The GallowgateShots podcast is sponsored by Tyre Spot, the Northeast's leading tyre supplier with branches across the region. Tyre Spot don't just do tyres, they cover everything from servicing to wheel alignment. They can handle every aspect of your car's maintenance. For more information, visit tyrespot.co.uk. Enjoy the episode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the GallowgateShots YouTube channel and podcast. We are back. It is Wednesday evening, and we are here with a brand new show. It's myself, Kris, joined by Ritchy, and we are just going to summarize a couple of talking points from the week gone by, Ritchy. We've got a list. We're going to go through as many topics as we possibly can. But yeah, shall we just dive straight in and get into it? Yeah. So tonight we have both just been to the Stack event, which was basically not necessarily a question and answer with the CEO and a few others. Peter Silverson was in, a couple of others. Wasn't necessarily a live question answer, Ritchy. It was more of an update from the lads. It was hosted by Razor, so Matthew Raisbeck was there, basically interviewing the 5 lads on stage. But we're going to summarize what we found out, and certain topics we'll jump in and go in through a little bit more detail now, our opinions on it all. But first of all, because a lot of the talking point was stemmed towards St. James's Park and the possibility of moving stadiums. They did leave it till the very end segment to discuss that, but give a little bit of insight, didn't it? Not things that I think a lot of people are already guessing that this is what the future is going to be and what's guessing, but there's a couple of taglines which they were alluded to, which things we kind of know what's going to happen going forward.
100%. The biggest, that was the thing that I was most interested in hearing. So there was the 5 of them, and the questions weren't, as you say, they weren't live. So when you applied to be on this, you got an email to where there was a section if you wanted to submit a question. I just put no. I just had a feeling that probably people would submit similar questions to what I would have in mind. And if I was to do any questions, it would probably be around the stadium. So I was most interested to hear that topic. So there was Darren Eales, CEO, Peter Silverstone, Brad Miller, COO, Simon Capper, who's like finance, and Paul Mitchell was the sporting director. So the stadium topic, which was sort of kicked off by Brad Miller, and he sort of alluded to the 2 options, either expanding St. James's or possibly looking at a different site. And then Darren Eales chipped in and said the feasibility study and where we're at on this and at the stage of what the feasibility study coming to fruition or being produced or at the briefing stage. So it must be like within a couple of months or something.
Yeah, so it's coming towards the end of closing of the briefing stages.
So,
which basically means that it's very close of a decision being made.
I think you alluded to a delay in that they'd met some problems or something, didn't it? Darren said so. I can't recall sort of the exact words he said, but I think everybody got the sense of that they were leaning more towards a new site, and he asked for some audience participation, and where he painted the picture that if we stay at St. James's Park, it's already got 52,000 seats in it. They can do it up, make it look immaculate, and that's option 1.
Also grow revenue.
And then option 2, brand new site, more seats. Didn't say how many, but more, and more chances of growing the club, not just through football, but through non-football events, concerts, and things like that. That's option 2. And for a show of hands,
transforming what you would class as your stereotypical football stadium to an event.
To an event space, a multi-purpose.
Yeah, multi-purpose stadium, basically. Yeah. Similar to what you see with any sort of new build stadium. Spurs, Arsenal, Wembley, whatever it may be.
Yeah. And basically the audience were asked for show of hands on which they would prefer. So option one which was staying at St James's Park, and then option two, I would say, had a quick glance over my shoulder for each one. I'd say it was probably 80 to 90% in favour of moving. And he said that they'd done a study.
Because
no, it honestly didn't. I think I've seen the swing on social media, but just I guess just in life in general. And I guess maybe we're influenced by some of the stuff through the media. That we've definitely seen a rise of sort of the narrative being pushed through the media, which the cynic and people would it almost feels like that's kind of been club led, like fed into the media to say that that how expensive it's going to be to expand and redevelop St James's Park for quite a negligible difference on the capacity. So you start then thinking, well, 5,000 to 6,000, 7,000 or so extra seats, how many of them are going to be corporate? And a lot of people are led sort of with the feeling of if they're not getting tickets now, is it going to be more likely to be able to get tickets if it's a much bigger ground? So that'll influence things. Obviously, the balloting and the success rate people have, people will feel influenced by that.
Which seems to have dropped if you're looking and believing things that you see on social media. A lot of people weren't happy last season in regards to how many games they were getting to through entering the ballot and being a member and paying, what was it 40 quid, 30 quid last year for a membership. This season you're seeing a lot more people saying, I still haven't got a ticket for that, and we're a handful of games into the season now and home fixtures, and there's still people that haven't managed to get one, apart from a lot of people got them in the
cup games.
A lot of people got them.
Both cup games I got in. No, but it didn't surprise us. I've seen that shift to just people who are just like staunchly against moving and like, and it's there's no right or wrong answer. I guess I think they talked about that as well. They have to consider all factors, but I mean, again, there was a repeat of those statements, once in a generation opportunity, and they only want to write the check once. It doesn't sound like the type of statements you make when you're talking about adding on sort of a smallish number of seats to the existing ground.
And do you know what was quite telling, Rich, is the fact that they said it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. To me, that means that expanding St James's Park isn't going to happen, because if that didn't work, and in the future maybe you could build a new stadium.
Exactly. You only want to write the check once.
New stadium.
I mean, they said he only wants to write the check once. So like, if you add on, you spend with the complexities which they talked about, is sort of the feasibility study uncovered some problems, which is probably with how prohibitive it is that in the area that it is with the city that's been built up around it, that they can't add on as much as what they would. So adding on that and then finding 3-4 years down the road, it's not enough, and then they're having to write another check. So now the show of hands definitely didn't shock us. I mean, I think I've even noticed myself swing toward it. I mean, that stadium is the only stadium I've known. I've grew up with it. The people in my family have grown up with it. It's not that I've bonded to it from the success that we've had there, because we've had none. But in terms of like this, in a new stadium, it doesn't necessarily correlate with that. It guarantees that you're going to suddenly all of a sudden become successful. But he painted the picture from a PSR perspective and like revenue streams, that before people made the decisions on whether they prefer to stay or prefer a new stadium, that the revenue that we could make through the new stadium would, you put a number on it, but it was like, it
was like a lot. It's kind of an untapped market for Newcastle.
It was like 4 or 5 times the amount of what we could with 52,000 seats.
I think he summarized. I think he just said double.
Double. Yeah. So I mean that might have influenced people at the point of where you're encouraged to put your hands up there, when we've just been talking about PSR and how so restricted.
Do you think that has influenced it? Because personally thinking, I was always basically St James's Park or nothing. That's what I was probably about a year ago, I would say. But obviously, everything that we're seeing now and the outcome of the hurdles that we have with PSR in front of we're thinking, well, maybe this is the only way around it, and that's in a nutshell, that's what it is.
I think it probably has influenced a lot of people. So you were adamantly wanting to stay a year ago. What are you now, then? I think you put your hands up.
Yeah, I put my hand up because I think you have to look at the future of the football club, and yes, the history that comes and the heritage that you have with St James's Park and the memories that you have, like you said, growing up, being there with your family and certain things happening in the ground. St James's Park not being there is not going to take away those memories
No,
from you.
it's a building, and like I get you bonded to it, but when we are operating within a PSR landscape, it was touched on heavily amongst the five of them. Just sort of that is the reality. That's the landscape of football now, and I think anybody is probably going to be more open-minded to the opportunities that might be afforded to us by having greater revenues as a result of having a bigger stadium.
Well, we had a discussion on the way over here, and even if you're just looking at the likes of the St. James's Park being your stereotypical, like I mentioned at the start, a football stadium, and solely that's all that you're going to get. Where you mentioned the likes of Stadium Light down the road, like you see every single summer some sort of musical event or a tour going on there, and that's money that we could basically steal from. It sounds harsh to say steal it from them, but that's kind of what's going to happen with a brand new stadium.
I think we've got a better infrastructure as a city to host events. That's probably why we're a host venue for the Euros and they're not. There's not a huge amount of difference in the capacities. They're 48 and we're 52. But in terms of like the transport network and obviously the hotel infrastructure that's in and around the ground, and I suppose it's another reason why with the Euros that I think we're probably all looking at a new site, because that's 4 years away. We are a chosen host venue. There's going to be no huge renovation on St. James's Park that's going to start before then, and therefore if it's going to be after that, that's 4 years down the drain. And we're talking about at the briefing stage, the decision making stage of where we're told about the outcome, to then be told of this can't happen for another 4 years. I just can't see it happen. I think the biggest worry that people have had, and he touched on it, was that it was the biggest USP of the stadium is its location. Its proximity to the city and the surrounding economy, the businesses that rely on it or thrive as a result because of their proximity to the ground. But he said, I think the analogy that he said was
he's not going to pull the elastic.
Not going to pull the elastic to breaking point. So it's going to be. That suggests to me that there's
Leazes Park.
It's
Leazes Park.
It's next door.
Yeah. It's Leazes Park. So I think obviously the rumours beforehand anyway going into this was obviously locations and where a new stadium can be built. And as obviously the months have progressed, the only kind of rumour now is Leazes Park, and the fact that obviously when St. James's Park will be demolished, then it given back to likes of Greenbelt, and it will be like sort of a park location that's going to replace St. James's Park. So you're just basically moving the sites across and swapping them a little bit. And do you know what it is? The more you think about it,
it will get pushed back.
Yeah,
there's going to be. It's a green space. I think it's lost its status or whatever, green flag status or whatever they call it. But there will be pushback. Unfortunately, I'm old enough to remember times when there's been new sites mentioned for us, and like the people do push back. There's obviously trees that are a couple of 100-year-olds. There's like bats that nest there. There's nesting birds and stuff. There's going to be, but I guess the trade-off is in swapping the space, and that if we can give the city a better space than what it currently has now, that recent board appointment where you look at his background and he's got ties to the local council, and when you're talking about that like sort of level of like decision making, there's probably no coincidences that somebody who's appointed to the board to work alongside Brad Miller from the stadium, from an asset point of view for the stadium, is not that can't be a coincidence. I mean, I think his granddad was someone who oversaw the build of the East Stand, which is the oldest stand in the stadium. And you like family ties to the last time that we're in a position to renovate the current ground. Suddenly we've got his grandson who's here now, who's got a Newcastle Council
ready to
background.
Knock it all down.
I think he's a South, so he's going to knock his granddad's stand down. So it did. I think everybody realised what they were witnessing, which is, as much as you could say, is that all roads point to new.
Yeah, I think obviously that you do have the fan advisory board there. There's a couple of the members of that on stage beforehand, just doing a brief description as to what their title basically does. It was I can't remember his name, McCarthy, whose surname, who actually watches the channel. Sorry, I can't remember. It was Michael. Might be wrong. I might just give you a random name there.
Is he the chairman? Is he?
Mr. McCarthy? That's how I remember him.
Yeah. He come across well, to be fair.
Yeah, spoke really well about what they do as an advisory board. They know as well by what he was saying, because it was Razor that said, "Can you give any sort of insight in the stadiums?" Definitely not. So they kind of know there's obviously been discussions there as well. And just to put it out there, they didn't categorically say that.
Yeah, no, they didn't say.
Stadium. But what we got from reading between the lines is expect a move.
All right, expect a move. I think that's where we heavily made it hinted towards that. That's. I mean, that arena site, I don't know is it possible to build on there? Is it been sold to a housing company? But that's still within the city boundaries. So if that was possible, but I think if we could retain where the location that we've got now, more or less, give or take a park difference, and have a ground that allows more people in, that generates more revenue. I've swung from being like St James's Park's iconic. It's like one of the best stadiums in the country. To now feeling open-minded about it, to even noticing that when I'm at the games, I'm starting to sort of look at it's quite dated, and I'm going there to watch the game and enjoy the football and hope for a win, not to be like sitting in luxury. But I think when you look at the East Stand and like that's antiquated by anyone's standards, and the messages of like best in class, and looking at what the Saudis are delivering in sport now, they're obviously heavily involved in it, and like where that stadium fits in with their portfolio. I would hate to think that we had the opportunity to get something that would be considered best in class and then turned our nose up on it and opted to stay.
It's going to be an elite stadium. I think
we've been wanting investment for so long. We've finally got owners that are prepared to do it, and that once the generation statement, you're like, we can't be that generation.
You can't let that slip. You can't let that moment just pass by. But then I think that the main concern for me as a football fan was always location. That was the big thing, because if you move that stadium away from the city centre, then you lose a hell of a lot. You really do. But the fact that they said, obviously, they've taken that into the equation and looked at it as the factor. And I think that's probably going to be a deciding factor as well for a lot of fans like myself, where you're thinking, well, if it's too far away, then no, St. James's Park all the way and extend that. But the fact that they're saying that, it's kind of, well, it is, by the sound of it, it's going to stay in the city centre. It's a complete no-brainer. But then I think you're running the risk of what they're going to build. I was already commenting saying, as long as we don't get a running track around the ground as well.
We won't do that.
Hopefully not.
West Ham have got one. It wasn't
they were gifted
purpose built. Was it? I mean, off the top of my head, though, the clubs that I can think of have been given who've got a new stadium, and like Sunderland, Roker to Stadium of Light, Middlesbrough, Essen to Riverside, Man City got the Etihad. West Ham, obviously, there's an Olympic ground.
Stadium was donated.
Arsenal and Spurs. I think all of them are happy with their new stadiums. Everton, they are not in it yet, but they seem pretty encouraged by it. The progress that everyone's been seeing.
A great championship stadium.
But I mean, the great. I'm sure they'll string a few results together and survive. But I mean, I think all of them fan bases are happy about West Ham. But it's because it wasn't built for football, and everyone's experience of it from an away fan perspective, you feel like you're miles away from the football as a result of the fact that it wasn't built for football. Yeah. But everyone else's, maybe barring Man City's, I'm sure was also some sporting event that was being held in Manchester, and they inherited it that way. But they've maybe modified it. But the Soulless Bowl thing I see, because obviously the architecture of a lot of the sort of modern stadiums looks fairly bowl-like in terms of soulless, but like that is attributed to like these new grounds where there's no atmosphere. But I think that phenomenon of like diminishing atmosphere is rife across football anyway, even in St James's Park.
Well, I think you look at the fact that when we went to Wembley and we got the cup final, the atmosphere there, depending on where you're sat on the ground, you questioned it, and I was sat there, I wasn't too far away from the pitch, and you just couldn't really get a chant going. But
I mean, that Wembley is a compelling example, to be honest, because Wembley is such an iconic stadium. Like the ones we lost a couple of cup finals in a row to in the late 90s, and you're like, they built a new stadium, and people now still refer to the modern Wembley as this sort of iconic stadium, which it hasn't got any of the history.
It's got none of it.
It hasn't got the World Cup win wasn't there. So our history that we've had in that stadium, which we're all like great fond memories for in terms of the in my lifetime, the Keegan teams, the Bobby Robson teams, and so on. It's like whoever's going to be pulling on the shirt, the lads who are representing the team that I support, regardless of the building that we're in, that's not going to change. Like nothing's going to, like if I was even dead against, I want to stay at St. James's Park, I'm really against the new stadium. If that's the way that they go, I'm still going to go and watch the lads and still support them. It's not going to make us think, well, that's it, gone. My club's gone now. I don't support them anymore.
And to be fair, me and you could get one side each of the trophy cabinet and carry it across to Lees's Park. That's not going to take much effort.
couple of baldies in.
But yeah, obviously the reason that obviously we're looking at moving grounds is to overcome PSR and bring more revenue into the football club, and that leads one to the next talking point, which is going to be the likes of the January transfer window. We've looked at previous players that were brought in January, and the first one after the takeover, there was a lot of players arrived.
The first January,
Target,
Bruno.
There was quite a handful that came in.
Burn,
then
Wood.
The one after that, the Anthony Gordon.
On the last day
came in. We'll push that forward. That wasn't one that was supposed to be done in January. The club openly came out and said, "Well, it came available, so we had to do it."
It was like an opportunistic one. It went right down to the last day. The Amazon documentary showed sort of the end bit of it. I'm sure there was a decision-making process of identifying a number of players that could come in and hit the ground running, and then the documentary presented to us that it was Anthony Gordon that was the one that kind of jumped out for them, and then the documentary showed like the kind of the bartering, quite bullish. Amanda Staveley saying that they were bluffing. We've got it done on the last day, but so then you've got. I mean, that's just one solitary signing other than the cluster of like sort of British signings, excluding Bruno on the first one that we've done very little business in January. It's what I probably anticipate will happen again. That'll very little will get done.
I think a lot of people are looking at the January transfer window and just assuming that we've got all this money to spend because of the gay saga in the summer. What did that go to? 70 million in the end or something around about that figure?
4 or 5 bids of these are the figures that kept on getting reported and rejected. But like, I mean, I guess that will be the perception that there's 75, 80 million burning a hole in my pocket. It must still be there. But you wonder if since then with Paul Mitchell coming in, and he talked about it, that he's one of his big regrets is learnings is coming in mid-window. And since he's now got that experience, he's got that reference point of sort of coming into an already established process of identifying talent, which was run by Dan Ashworth, and then
said challenging, didn't he? I think
he said challenging.
Challenging situation.
So I mean, he's now got his feet under the table a little bit more. He's hopefully found a good sort of synergy with the people who are already there, and he's got this window now. But I don't think it's going to be a window that he's like stamping his authority on things. I think the football landscape's moved on in terms of the perception of Paul Mitchell and being this sort of talent spotter that unearths sort of the player underneath the already kind of established ones. Like he rattled off a few of them names when he was asked to talk about his career, but I think the way the football is now is that there's no real secrets. Like everyone's data driven now. You've got like Brighton with Tony Bloom and his data algorithm.
Classed it as a sign-off process. There's a sign-off process.
He doesn't get the final say.
And a psychology behind every single signing.
Yeah, and that not everyone can get what they want, but he has to think of that in short, medium, long term. So he has to find a compromise with Eddie. Obviously, there was questions to him. Pre-submitted questions. A lot of them were about his personal relationship with Eddie, which he seemed to
summarized it well.
He come across well. To be fair, I think he had been wanting the opportunity to clarify that he had 2,000 people there to do so, and that I reckon if both of them with some period of reflection could admit to one another, that could handle that differently. They did each do interviews. Eddie kick-started it with the one out in Germany, and obviously Paul himself. Then I think that the big ones, the big takeaways from the one he did relating to the way we've done transfers is not fit for purpose. And then I think going into this January, coupled with the fact that the people think that there's this amount of money that is there to spend, which we didn't spend in summer, is that we could do that in January. But if I'm as a betting man, I don't think Gay happens.
So there's been a couple of questions straight in, and of course they're about Gay, because that was kind of the only real rumor that was saw in the summer. And it comes from Gary that says, I still think we want Gay. Well, the club do. Do you think we'll go back in for him? Which kind of goes to the next question. I think that we might go back in for him, because they'll realize that we probably will get him for the price that we're trying to get him for in the summer. Probably less than that, to be fair. You're probably half in his price or close.
I'm not sure.
Do you not think?
No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure we'll go back in for him.
All right, okay. So you think it's nothing to do with price? You just think the club have gone from that now?
I think it's maybe not necessarily that the interest is not there. How did maybe say that wrong? Actually, we might still be interested, but there's a few factors why I don't think it'll happen.
Do you think that, just to touch on that, do you think that we've looked at the English market and realised that it probably is overpriced? We all knew that it's overpriced, and maybe now it's a time to look elsewhere.
But possibly, yeah. I mean, people might think, Paul Mitchell coming in and looking at the domestic market, and obviously he's been known as someone who's like found talent from abroad for good prices. They've enhanced their value and they've been sold on, and that's something that we need to do. Player trading is going to be a big thing about with how we get round and navigate PSR. But is Mark Gay a Paul Mitchell identified player, as he wasn't part of that process? It was obviously something that was already there. He came into it mid-July. But the reason I don't think it'll happen is, and it might, I do rate him. I think he's a cracking footballer. And I think he has a skill set that we lack, pace being one of them, in the back line. But I think it's because it's Palace, and I don't think that relationship is healthy. I think because of Steve Parish, and I think now with if he doesn't extend his contract and he doesn't leave in January, he's going to enter into the last year of his contract by the summer. But players are still moving in the last year of their contract for big fees. Like, look at Bournemouth sold Nathan Ake, relegated Bournemouth in the last year of his contract for 40 million. We signed Harvey Barnes for 40 million. James Maddison last year of his contract, I think it was 30 or something. And I think, from Parish's point of view, Palace are right. They're banging trouble, and I think Mark Gay is worth more to Crystal Palace to retain him and hope that he can help them stay up than it is to cash in on him now for, as you say, a potentially slightly diminished fee to the what he was demanding. I don't think you could rightfully ask for them sums of money again, but I don't think it'll be far off it. I think you're probably still talking 50 for a club like us. I think there is a Newcastle tax, if you like, but as far as is there better value abroad, and is Paul Mitchell the man to do it? I think off the top of my head, our biggest signings that we've made under the new owners have all been from abroad. Isaac, Botman, Bruno. Tonali.
Yeah.
The domestic ones that we've made, which was a needs-must situation in the first window with Byrne, Target on loan, Wood.
To be fair, though,
Trippier. They were the cheaper signings.
We've got to look at Tino and Hall as well in that as well, who were probably,
they look
Hall,
fair price now, but
at
the time they didn't. But in terms of our most expensive signings, when people think overseas, I don't know. I think there's probably not necessarily a Newcastle tax domestically or overseas. When the people look at Newcastle are in, will, as Murdoch said, we'll stick 20% on it. I mean, he said that, and he's closer to the deals than I'll ever be. So if he's saying it, then it might be. But I think there's definitely a fee that a club of Newcastle stature would pay, which would be more than, say, a club of, say, Brighton stature, if they're interested in them. That we would expect to pay more, whether they're domestic or abroad. But no, I can't see Gay happening. I think as long as they keep on being in trouble with fighting relegation, I mean, they seem to finish strong. They did last year. I know they had a new manager bounce, but I think you'll be persuaded to stay on, and I think it suits the player to be into the last year.
I'm that side of the fence, you know.
Right?
I'm on that side of the fence. I think we'll go back in. Not too dissimilar for the initial price that we went in at. And I think the deal will get done, you know.
Well, I hope it does. He's a quality player.
Because I think what we need right now is yes, we know Botman's return is, people are saying close. It's not that close because he still got to get up to speed, and we don't know if there's going to be any sort of issues with his injury when he comes back to playing football. But just how comfortable Gay can play on the left-hand side of the centre-back partnership.
Both, yeah. I mean, but we've got Lloyd Kelly. We've added him in there as well. I mean, And then on the right, which is Gay's right-footed, but you've got Cher, who's I think he's already walking a tightrope with the yellow card situation. I think he's one away from his 5th, so he's always a risk in that. He's been exposed. I think he's had a few dodgy games for us this year, to be fair.
I think him and the partnership between him and Byrne have been questionable at times.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's got a lot better than the last handful of games, but it's been questionable since the start of the season.
I mean, it's probably systematic of the performances throughout the season as a team, really, because at the beginning of the season we picked up points we probably didn't deserve performances-wise, and then it turned a little bit with the Everton game. I think we played really well against Everton. Gordon missed the penalty. And then Brighton, I think we're battered Brighton, to be fair. Yeah. And they've come and done a smash and grab number on us, really. But and then now in the last 3 games, was it starting with the Chelsea Cup game and then Arsenal and Nottingham Forest? Now our performances are sort of aligned with the outcome we've got. So, and I think they've, as a result, the 2 lads, where particularly Cher, he's had a couple of dodgy moments in there, but I think naturally he's coming to the end of his sort of high output years because of his age.
Retired from international football.
Was he 33 coming up? And I think we'll get a year's extension, and I think we will probably go into the market for somebody who's a younger, right-sided.
I think what we'll have to throw into the mix as well, that we know that, well, Paul Mitchell came out and said that he categorically wants people to know that he does not sign off the players. It's not solely on him. There's obviously some, like we mentioned.
He said no sporting director. He didn't want to dispel the myth that sporting directors make the final decision. It's got to be collaborative.
People, numerous people involved, and it has to, like we said earlier, it has to go through the sign-off process. But imagine, right? So imagine we do get Gay, and Gay comes in, right? You could have 3 of starters for England's defence also playing for Newcastle United.
The funny one would be if we got James Trafford, and then
I know
that is one I definitely can't see happening. By the way,
Trafford,
I definitely see Trafford.
I agree.
Is it the Odysseus one? He's obviously just a PSR workaround. Ruddy was Karius's replacement. Dubravka will probably leave.
Well, we're expecting Dubravka to go in the summer, which never.
Just a lack of interest, I guess, in him. And then obviously he's come back in for 1 game. Was it the Wimbledon game he started? He went off injured, and then he had some concussion. And I don't think. I mean, he's coming up to 35. I mean, I can't speak for him, but is he going to be happy to be a number 2? And can he be bothered to go somewhere in the twilight of his career and be a number 1? I would hope he has the ambition to do that. But either way, I can see him leaving. I can see Trafford coming in, whether it be January or the summer. At some point, I see him, and then I believe he's and he must be. Highly regarded at the England level. He keeps on getting drafted in to even the senior group. It might just be out of convenience because the under 21s are in St. George's Park, and they can just. I think someone dropped out, and the Ramsdale dropped out, so they got. But he seems to be in and around the setup. Exactly, Tino. So Gay, Tino, Lewis Hall, 3 of the back 4.
And it can only be a good there with Gay as well. We all know what Eddie Howe's like for signing players, and he's got a no dickhead policy. And Gay, how he handled the situation in the summer, he handled it very well. It was all on the likes of Parish.
Parish
handled it.
Like I've never seen it. I genuinely haven't seen anything like an owner like openly auctioning his footballers. I mean, we had Elise, and then the 2 or 3 interviews that he'd done.
He's trying to create bidding wars just now.
And then I think he said he was surprised that nobody came in for Eze, and it's like your players who are watching that. I don't know. It's got to be unsettling, and I think perhaps you've seen with Gay. His start of the season, I think we were looking at him a bit more keenly with the interest that we had. It seemed to like go on all summer. And then Palace and Gay started the season really poorly, but he is a good footballer. I would love to see him sign for us, but I just think the Parish thing, I don't think we'd be in any rush to go back and
give them money
and do business with them again. But we'll see.
We can see it. One of the other things that we want to talk, and we're not going to go too long with this one tonight, so this is why we're firing through the topics. I had a discussion beforehand, me and Ritchy, that the likes of Amanda and Maida had left the club, and the connection that they had with Eddie Howe and things like that, and had basically an ally. Eddie Howe had the ally in them too in the boardroom. But what Amanda was also working on was the likes of the promotion and the basically reigniting the women's side of the football club. But we've got to remember that the women's team weren't even associated with Newcastle at one point under Mike Ashley. But obviously that changed with the new ownership. And what we wanted to highlight and personally, I don't go to the ladies' game, so I feel as if I'm a bit pushing this one on people and speaking out of turn, really. So if anybody is watching or listening back over, just let us know your thoughts as well. But we've seen that when the ladies first got the opportunity to play at St James's Park, I believe there were sellouts of the pair of them, or close to sellouts. Of
three fixtures of 20 at the third level of the women's game, like 20,000 plus. 28 was the maximum. So like better than even a lot of WSL.
Well, they broke the records, didn't they?
Broke the records at that level. I think they would have brought a lot of the records, and even the highest level. But obviously now they're in a league above, back-to-back promotions, and then this weekend gone was the first fixture that they've played at St James's Park, and obviously was a significant difference in the
so attendance seemed to have dropped for the attendances when the girls do play at St James's Park. And we've been discussing why is that? What are the reasons for that? So the one was only last weekend, wasn't it? They scored a last-minute equaliser. And we've had a bit of a discussion. Is it solely down to the time of year? People mentioned that because you put a post on Twitter, I believe it was, and a lot of people commented on it with their reasons for it. A lot of them stemming to the time of year, it's freezing cold, so close to Christmas. And a lot of it was just people saying that maybe the novelty of that is worn out, because the first game at St James's Park, I took my two boys. To have that experience of taking me two boys to St James's Park, that was the reason for it. I couldn't care what was happening, like if it was the men's game, the women's game, whatever it was. I just wanted that moment to take them. Then once I'd done it, I didn't have that urge to go again.
Yeah.
And you don't have those opportunities. Those opportunities come few and far between these days, especially in the men's side of things, where you just can't get 3 tickets together. It's impossible. A lot of people mentioned the likes of the pricing of the tickets as well, because I believe at the start it was like £4 or
three
like that.
for the bands. And
I think you even got in free with a season ticket. If you want a Newcastle season ticket to hold at one point, you got in for free. But I think those prices doubled. Was it £8 last weekend? Which
£8
doesn't help either.
I mean, that stimulated quite a big response. That tweet that I put out about the differences in attendances and from last season to this. So obviously a lower level of football, 3 games that were played there, 20,000. One of them is 28, and then we've got promoted, playing at St James's Park. There was a big push from the club to try and break the attendance record. A lot of paid for stuff like ads and stuff. A lot of the responses to that tweet was people not knowing it was happening,
which I found mental, because I saw loads.
But,
even players like, so I mentioned to you, Bruno and Joe Linton, both
of
those on
sharing
the Instagram
it, exactly
stories.
Like first team men's players sharing it. A lot of stuff from the club, like creative campaigns to push it. And it was 11,000, which is a huge difference. And I suppose out of reading some of the responses, there's probably not one single right answer to it. It's a combination of all of them, really. And I'm sure that there's probably sort of more compelling reasons than others. And more often than not, the price is the big one. That is a big hike. But in terms of where I was kind of wanting to get a sense of people's opinions on what they thought the reasons for the drop-offs were, was in putting Amanda's name in the mix, is because Amanda and Murdad, with having a presence on social media, which is quite unusual for prominent football executives on a Premier League level, they were really supportive of the women's game and really good marketers at it. Now they're not there, so we don't have, and there's a lot of goodwill towards them as a couple. Obviously, they were seen as the people who liberated us from Mike Ashley. So, like, anybody would want to support what they're encouraging us to get behind in the women's game. And like you say, the shift from them being part of the foundation, I believe they were, and then becoming full-time professionals, the only the women's team on the 3rd division that were, created a buzz around it. So I think not having that presence around them in terms of the profile of the co-owners is a factor. But I think all of the other things that people have suggested are also factors: the price, the weather, how close we are to Christmas. There was an England international game on the same day. Featuring 3 Newcastle. Not that we would have known that at the time, because obviously the lineups announced an hour or so before. But the game was on the men's game. The novelty thing, it's well, I think you've just alluded to it. You went to it and you didn't feel compelled to want to go back for one reason or another. There'll be people who feel the same. And then a lot of the local lasses, if somebody suggested that we've released the majority of the people that were released were local players who maybe contribute to maybe a couple of thousand in terms of friends and family and stuff, and their network of people that they would want to get along, and replace them with players from outside of the area. So maybe in amongst all of them factors, the Amanda murder, people not knowing what was on, whether they think it was well marketed or not, and the weather and Christmas and all that kind of stuff. Maybe the Southampton game was the wrong fixture to kind of push the campaign to break the attendance record, because it's not a cup final. It's not a game with jeopardy where there's a knockout involved. It's a game sort of only midway through the season. We've just come off the back of a couple of dodgy results. It's Southampton. They're not a prestigious opponent. It maybe would have made more sense to reserve the quest for breaking the championship attendance record for the Sunderland game in March.
Well, I kind of think that they're expecting that. I think
it's almost a given. Really,
expecting it's a given that it's no matter what fixtures.
So was it wasted on that fixture to go that route? Like
possibly
getting 11,000 in I think is a respectable attendance anyway. But it's a hugely significant difference in what they were getting last year, which seems counterintuitive, because you would think the better standard of football against the better standard of opposition in a higher level of football would bring about more crowds. But then you factor in all of these things that we've just been talking about, and it's hard to say one way or the other why. But the answer is probably a combination of all of them, and I think it's an open-ended thing. Is like we don't know the answer. I don't think anybody who's
scratching their head now thinking, why was there a bit of a drop off?
I don't think anybody who's like in the club now looking at them and thinking, what's happened? They have the answer. It's one for them to chew over.
And just taking a pinch of salt and thinking, well, that fixture with Sunderland's upcoming, and that's going to be the revenue maker for the season.
It probably is. I mean, I think it would be alarm bells going off if it was poor in the Sunderland, but it won't. It won't be.
Of course, won't.
They'll break the record. They'll break whatever the attendance was at the stadium alive.
You know, as a fan base, that even when it's a derby, no matter if it's not the senior men's squad, we still take high numbers. I remember going to the stadium of light, and it was the kids.
Was that Papa Johnson? The battered.
It was the battered. I think it went 4-0 or something daft like that. And I was there, and we had put the kids out, and I can't remember who scored for Sunderland, but he was giving it the big and like this.
Oh, it was the American guy?
I can't remember who it was.
He was giving it. He was like one of the senior ones. Was like playing at that level.
I think he scored a couple.
He gave it the whole thing. So that's just the theatre of the derby.
What I'm trying to say is the fact that it's going to generate numbers, no matter who's playing. It's going to mean you could be out playing against Sunderland. It's probably going to generate numbers for all the wrong reasons, mind. But it would generate numbers. Just take your Monday lads with you.
I'll shout out to Passion FC if you're watching.
Is there anything else that you want to touch on? Is anything?
Stadium was the big one, but I was wanting to talk about it before we came here, and then we ended up going to the stack thing, and then that was discussed. So I think that's definitely one that we're going to be hearing more imminently in the next couple of months. New year, I think the people are saying. Women's January outgoings, I suppose, in January. Almiron, it's got to be Wilson. He's still valued to Wilson because you know if you can get him fit for 7-8 games. Getting him fit's the big thing, but he could be the difference for somebody. You know, like if you get him a run of games, you know he's finishing prowess that getting. If he can notch 5 or 6 goals between now and the end of the season for somebody, then he could be the difference between staying up. I
think this is something that the club are going to have to learn from, or already learn from.
Where is he anyway? Like if he was back for the West Ham game, but like why didn't he just hop along the Middle East to?
I wouldn't suggest hopping for Callum Wilson at the minute.
to Saudi, the rest of his team in Saudi training, like he wasn't there.
You would think we have seen him in and around the lads, but after a victory at St James's Park, where he's there welcoming them into the dressing room and things like that. But I think the issue with Callum Wilson, and what I was going to say is what the club need to learn from previous mistakes. Obviously, we know it's other ownerships, and that's moved on now, is the fact of not selling players at the right time.
Yeah,
we've still got players.
I think that ship sailed for him.
Yeah,
he's in the last year of his contract, I think, unless he's done a sneaky signing like Byrne and done a year extension.
But then you've got the likes of other players that have, I'm not going to say outstayed the welcome at the club, because there is still a handful that took a long time to ship out.
Like Isaac Hayden's still on the books.
Isaac Hayden.
Like Fraser was got shot. He's permanent to Southampton, wasn't he? Like
Fraser's
toward
gone,
the
I
end.
believe. Yeah.
Hayden's still kicking about the under
books.
21s. I mean, what length of contract must he have got? And then I like the Almiron.
Hendrick was around for God knows how long.
Like it's on the right. It's a funny one because on the right, clearly on the left now that Willock and Joe Linton have re-established their little axis of interchangeable skill sets that work either as the left of the middle three or the left of the front three.
Or
it works so well.
On the right as well from Joe Linton, which was
and then on the right, I mean, Mr. Versatile. But then and then you've got Mr. Impact sub Harvey Barnes.
Yeah.
And then you've got Gordon. And then on the right, you've got Murphy and Almiron, and then they're getting snubbed now for playing Gordon on the right, which whilst that's coincided with the last three results, by the Chelsea Cup game, but certainly the last two league games, and how decisive having a right footer like Gordon playing on his strong side with a first time cross for Isaac. Like if that was going on the left, that probably doesn't happen. He cuts in, momentum's different to that the way he plays that first time. But it's I don't know if Gordon's going to be he strikes as the type of person just from how thoughtful he is and how passionate he is about his game and him playing at his optimum, that he's not going to have the patience to play in his eyes out of position. But he like that sort of inverted winger is the norm now. But in that case, when we're talking about they said increasing revenues through commercial activity and so on, but player trading.
Yeah.
And then who's the players that we're talking about leaving is Almiron. It's not going to bring much. Wilson's not going to bring much. At some point, we're probably going to have to look at an Isaac, Bruno, or Gordon, or a player in that category. And I would probably...
people snap you. Like people will literally go at you for
but
we're seeing Man City do that.
Man City have done it. I mean, Aston Villa have done it with Grealish. Like
Spurs done it with Gareth Bale.
I mean, not necessarily PSR world there. It wasn't necessarily PSR landscape for Spurs. I'm not even sure it was so much when Villa sold Grealish, but it was for Douglas Luiz, but to Juventus, and then they got a couple of players in exchange that haven't even kicked the ball for Aston Villa. I mean, this just shows you how stupid PSR is when we're forced into like transactions where they're almost like swap deals, but they're booked as transactions. Like what we did with Nottingham Forest, we send them 20 million, they send us 35. The difference between the two is 15. Or if you would look at it a different way, we got 15 million plus a keeper for Elliot Anderson, keeper that we don't have any use for.
Don't know the value of.
Don't know that. I mean, we'll find it when the books are published, I guess. But the rumors 20 million. These are these strange deals that are happening in this PSR landscape now. But player trading was mentioned today again at the Stack event and like it won't happen in January, but at some point, and I think a little bit like how we've become more open-minded to a new ground, we probably as a fan base have to become more open-minded to losing a player that we really like.
Sadly,
and they're looking at the way that the team's functioning at the minute. In the short term, you're thinking, is Gordon going to be patient enough to persistently being played out of position for the betterment of the team, whilst we've clearly got something that works with Willock and Joe Linton, but then relying on Willock staying fit.
It's great to see that again, though, isn't it?
Joe Linton not getting banned.
I mean, Willock on that
Champions League season in the cup final was underpinned by partnerships all over the pitch doing really well, and we've seen that a little glimpse of that over the last three games.
You had there was two on that side. You had on the right hand side, you had the triangle between Miggy, Bruno, and Trips.
Yeah,
that little triangle was kept on dinking the ball over the top of Miggy.
Works so well. So the outgoings in January, I can see someone like an Almiron, because even we're preferring to play Gordon and over them too, Murphy and Almiron. I think Murphy's happy to he knows his place in the squad. Almiron maybe less so. He's coming again. He's past 30.
One of the shouts which I didn't even think about. Right, another part of the field is left back. Target.
God, he's not played
He had
since
such a
that Man
great
United game,
impact
has
when
he?
we had him on loan. Then obviously we bought him.
He
And
did,
he
aye.
got the injury. Then we've just barely seen him since.
We were desperate to keep him, to retain him. I mean, I can remember the
He had a
last
great season. That's
what
why.
was it? Well, I can't remember what game it was. Was it the last game of the season? In the house first season that he came into, where we stayed up and finished strongly. I remember Bruno collaring Target during an interview saying he needs to stay.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
And we signed him, and it felt like a great signing. But he's obviously had loads of injury problems.
it was a cup game that he got injured when he
It
started in midfield.
was the Man United game at
Yeah.
Old Trafford. He got injured, and it was a bad one. And then obviously he's had setback and eczema and stuff, which I've never heard anyone. I mean, I gather from those who read some of the comments, people who've had eczema, it can be pretty bad.
When it's inflamed, it gets really bad. Yeah.
But with Lewis Hall and Lloyd Kelly, who can play there, and Dan Burn, I mean, the latter two aren't ideal. They do look like centre backs playing at left back, and you see whenever you move them two back to their natural position, they look like different players.
Yeah.
So you're relying on Lewis Hall staying fit. So Target. I mean, he's in and around the squad again now. I mean, he's on the bench, so it would be preferable to bring on a natural left back for a left back if required. If something was to happen to Lewis Hall, then shoehorning a centre back in, because we've seen how exposed we can be when we do that. Not that Lewis Hall's Lloyd Kelly's a slouch. He's actually quite quick.
He got that assist, didn't he?
But he doesn't look comfortable. And then you got like Tino, who did play on the left, and even played left in the Champions League as well. It was a Dortmund away, I think.
He put himself on England's doorstep to play on the left as well. Well, the first time he was with the England senior team, he was interviewed afterwards, and he said, "I'll play in whatever position I'm asked to play, as long as I'm playing for my country."
I think so. I don't think we'll cash in on Target, but he doesn't have a long-term future at all.
Yeah. So I'm going to wrap it up there, mate. I just did want to mention as well. Blue Sky. We've been having. I mentioned this on Monday night, me and Bestie, because we made the move across to Blue Sky. I hadn't personally been on Twitter for a couple of years now, but slowly that move is happening. We've seen a lot more Newcastle United fans over on the app as well. Kev Lawson. Thanks to Kev Lawson, because he's given a big push for
starter packs.
If you're wearing black and white stripes, Kev Lawson's there like a cheerleader on that app with the banners out. Welcome
my
along.
Phone just pinging all the time with people following all the time, and I haven't posted, but what I've seen of it looks like the sort of more rational thinking Newcastle fans. Not a criticism of anyone.
It was highlighted on Monday night. Bestie highlighted this, is that we've got to remember, since we've been on that app, there hasn't been a match day.
Yeah. And we've come off the back of 3 wins, so everyone's in a good fettle.
Exactly, yeah. So give it a couple of times. But at this moment,
I don't need two angry apps in my life. There's one that consumes a sort
about you.
That's a good point, to be fair to Bestie. And everyone's on their best behavior, aren't they? Because they're new to it, and they're like, everyone's following everyone back. Even people who've trolled us before, who've moved across, have followed us. So it's a clean slate for everybody. But the first loss is when the meltdown occurs. That's a good point. But
we'll see how
it won't take long until it gets ugly, like Twitter did. But there's definitely there's less Team U adverts, there's less bots. Like if you look at the replies in like any mainstream outlet, Sky Sports, Premier League, or whatever, all of the blue tick replies, like you have to scroll down for ages to get to like a normal reply, and then it's just like madness, like just saying well done, gorgeous, like just not. I don't know who they are or what their purposes of it, why they do it like that, but that's not happening on Blue Sky yet. It just feels like a very early Twitter, which shouldn't be surprising because it's invented by the guy who invented Twitter
originally. It is OG Twitter. Thanks everybody for joining us. There will be plenty more stuff coming this week as well throughout the channel. Obviously, we've got the West Ham game coming up on Monday, so there won't be an Always Smiling Faces podcast on Monday because we'll all four at the game there. So we'll rearrange that hopefully for another night in the week. You will have match previews coming up, match reactions, and all sorts as well. If you have enjoyed this one tonight, there has been over 100 people watching throughout. So just give us a like on this video. It means a lot to us. Become a subscriber. It costs you nothing to do that as well. And if you do want to give a little bit back, it is just $2.99 a month to become a member as well. You get extra content, you get early access to stuff as well. And so we'll see you next time, and Richie will be back soon enough as well. See you later. Ta-ra.
The GallowgateShots podcast is sponsored by TyreSpot, the North East's leading tyre supplier with branches across the region. TyreSpot don't just do tyres, they cover everything from servicing to wheel alignment. They can handle every aspect of your car's maintenance. For more information, visit tyrespot.co.uk. Enjoy the episode.